Chapter 18. The chapter about stains. Take provisions on the journey. An old man had never done any works of merit, so his sons sent for him and made offerings to the Buddha and the Sangha in his name on 2 successive days. On the first, the Buddha advised him with the first 2 verses, and on the second with the last 2. 235. You are now like a withered leaf. Yama's men stand waiting for you. You stand at decay's door with no provisions for the journey found. 236. One should make an island oneself. Soon should the wise one endeavor. Removing the stain, blemishes, you will go to the noble realm. 237. You are now quite advanced in age. You have come to Yama's presence. There is nowhere to dwell, with no provisions for the journey found. 238. One should make an island oneself. Soon should the wise one endeavor. Removing the stain, blemishes, you will not come to birth again. The gradual purification. A Brahmin saw the monks waiting to go for alms, and each day improved the conditions where they gathered, until eventually he built a hall for them, and invited the Buddha and the monks for a meal. When the Buddha heard of his endeavors, he spoke this verse. 239. The sage gradually, little by little, moment by moment, should surely remove the stain from himself, like a smith removes the stain from silver. One's own deeds lead one on. A monk was so attached to his robes that when he died he was reborn as a louse in them. The monks went to divide his things, but the Buddha asked them to wait. After the monk was reborn again, the Buddha told the monks to divide the robes, explained what had happened, and spoke this verse. 240. As a rust stain arises from iron, and arisen it then eats it away, so with one who is overindulgent, his deeds lead him to a bad destiny. What brings about ruination? Venerable Lalutdayi was jealous of the chief disciples and declared himself also a Dhamma teacher. But when asked, he didn't even know one verse. When the Buddha found out, he related a previous life story in which Lalutdayi also promoted himself unjustly, and then he spoke this verse. 241. Lack of repetition is the ruin of chance. A lack of maintenance is the ruin of homes. Indolence is the ruin of one's appearance. Heedlessness is the ruin of the one on guard. The greatest stain. A youth got married, but his wife was given to adultery and put the young man to shame. When he met the Buddha, the latter reminded him that in a previous existence also he was betrayed by his wife, and then he taught him with this verse. 242. Bad conduct is a woman's stain. Stinginess is a giver's stain. Wicked actions are indeed stains, both in this world and in the next. 243. A stain that is worse than that stain, ignorance is the supreme stain. After abandoning that stain, be without stains, O monastics. Life is hard when seeking purity. Venerable Kulasari gave medical treatment to others in exchange for a portion of food, which is against the right ways of earning his livelihood as laid down by the Buddha. When the Buddha heard of his behavior, he gave the teaching in these verses. 244. Life is light for one without shame. with the bold courage of a crow, living a life with backbiting, recklessness, and with defilements. 245. Life is hard when endowed with shame, for the one seeking purity, for one sincere and not reckless, looking for purity of life. The result of not keeping the precepts. Some laymen were arguing as to which of the precepts is the hardest to keep. The Buddha told them they're all hard to keep and explained the matter further with these verses. 246, 247. The one who kills living beings and speaks a word that is not true, who takes what is not given here and who goes to another's wife, that person who is devoted to a drink of liquor, beer, and wine, digs up his own root in the world. 248. Know it thus, dear sir, a lack of restraint is a bad thing. Let not greed and corruption oppress you with suffering for a long time. How to attain concentration. The novice Tissa was always finding fault with the almsgiving of Anathapindika, Upāsikā, and other faithful disciples, and boasted his family gave better alms than they did. The monks found out he was the son of a lowly gatekeeper. The Buddha showed the monks how he tried to fool people in a previous life too, and taught them with this verse. 249. The people give according to faith, according to their confidence. The one who is dejected through food and drink given to others does not, either by day or night, attain to good concentration. 250. For the one in whom dejection is cut off, destroyed at the root, dug up, does by day and by night attain to good concentration. The great defilements. While the Buddha was preaching the Dhamma, one lay follower fell asleep. Another scratched the earth. One shook a tree. Another looked at the sky, and only one listened attentively. The Buddha explained they were a snake, an earthworm, a monkey, an astrologer, and a student of the Vedas in their previous births, and behave accordingly now. And then he spoke this verse. 251. There is no fire that is like passion, nothing that takes hold like hatred. There is no snare like delusion, and there is no flood like craving. Seeing one's own faults. The merchant Mendaka wanted to see the Buddha when he was passing through, but the outside ascetics tried to persuade him not to by telling him falsely that he teaches there is no result of actions. Mendaka went anyway, and the Buddha taught him with this verse. 252. Easy to see are others' faults, but one's own fault is hard to see. For one sifts other people's faults like chaff, but conceal one's own faults like a cheat conceals his defeat. The fate of a fault finder. Venerable Ujjana Sanyi was always finding fault with the others, so the monks asked the Buddha about it. He remarked that one who is scrupulous is doing well, but one who enjoys finding fault makes no progress, and he taught them with this verse. 253. One who looks for another's faults, who is an abject complainer, for him the pollutants increase. He is far from their destruction. The Buddhas are free from disturbance. Because of past deeds, the wanderer Supata did not go to meet the Buddha until the latter was on his deathbed. Venerable Ānanda wanted to stop him, but the Buddha allowed him to approach, and he asked 3 questions, the verses here being the reply. Supata was the last person ordained while the Buddha yet lived, and he soon became an arhat. 254. There is no footprint in the sky, no ascetic on the outside. Folk delight in impediments, the realized are free of them. 255. There is no footprint in the sky, no ascetic on the outside. There are no constant conditions, no disturbance for the Buddhas.